Hi, my name's Graydon, and we're in a town called Cambria, California, doing this instructional video. And the reason why we're here is because my house basically fell down in the earthquake, the studio as well, and it's being rebuilt. So while it's being rebuilt, I'm living up here where I have a home. It's a beautiful little beachside community. And I talked all these guys into coming up here and doing the video, so it's a good thing. Anyway, we're going to get into soloing stuff, technical stuff about the guitar, technical stuff about studio recording. And right off the bat, let's get into one technical aspect that, if you guys don't know, will do you a lot of good in the long run. Let's say you're in a recording studio and the engineer is very green, meaning he doesn't really know how to mic a guitar amp correctly. Let's teach him how to do it. First of all, an SM57 microphone, I don't know if we're seeing this on the camera, but if we are, that's pretty much the mainstay mic that everybody uses, especially for buzzsaw type guitar. It's a dynamic microphone, meaning it doesn't have a whole lot of highs. That's good, because you don't want to bring out the trashiness of the speaker. It's a very good mic for a nice mid-range, warm tone. Now, if we can see the speaker in here, do we have this in the shot, guys? The silver cone of the speaker, the reason I'm using this amp for a demonstration is you can actually see the shape of the cone inside the amp. What happens in the cone, the tone that comes out of the cone is very mid-rangey without a lot of meat to the sound. The farther away you get from the cone to the shell of the speaker, the more bassy it gets and undefined and kind of, you know, boxy sounding. So with one microphone, what we try to do is put this sucker right here, right near the grill cloth, maybe about an inch back, where it's kind of facing into the side of the cone, but is still getting some of the meat of the speaker. So now what you have is this, a combination of mid-range tone coming out of the voice center, you know, area of the speaker, and a little bit of fatness coming off the actual side of the speaker. This is what we call the sweet spot for miking. And I've tried a million different positions, and that's the best one. Now, there is a couple of alternative methods. One is to stick a mic directly at the center of the speaker and stick another mic out near the side, and then blend the two together. This is what Eddie Van Halen uses, and it's a pretty good sound. It's another sound. When you start adding more than one mic, you start running into possible phase problems, comb filter problems, which we won't get into now. So if you can get away with it with one mic, you're probably going to be better off. We'll talk about room mics later. In the beginning of my record date career, I was the first guy on the scene to use a strobe tuner. Everybody used to laugh at me and go, "What's wrong, man? Can't you tune up?" I go, "No, I want to make it a lot easier and quicker. I want to get the guitars tuned up and get to work." For example, you'd be in a movie date and the piano might be, let's say 100 yards away, and you got an 80-piece orchestra and you're yelling to the piano player, "Please give me an A so I can tune up." The guy's hitting an A and you don't hear anything, you know? So what I would do is I'd go over to the piano, get the strobe, you know, tuned to the piano, bring the strobe back, plug it back in, and tune up, and then I don't have to bother anybody for tuning notes for the rest of the day. Like I say, guys used to laugh at this, and I'm going, hey, it's the only way to go. Well, obviously, it became the normal thing to do. Now, there's a few kinds of tuners available on the market. This Con here, I don't know if it's still available. Originally, I think it was around 400 bucks, but you could get them cheaper with a deal. The only drag about this tuner is that you have to, you know, set to each note that you want to tune. Now, with the Korg tuners and all those other ones that are out there, the little pocket-sized ones that you have in your pedal board or you have on the ground, for live, it's a lot more practical because you just hit any note and it shows you what note it is, and then you tune it up, blah, blah, blah. But that isn't as accurate as this. This is a much better device for accuracy because those meters on those little tuners are always rocking around. You really don't know exactly what's going on. So I highly recommend that you use this kind of tuner if you can find one and afford it. Now, let's tune up. I'm sure that was the longest tuning session you've ever heard. Now, there's a reason for that. When I watch these videos, everybody seems to want to get through this real quick, and it disturbs me because you got to keep rewinding to tune up. So that's why I made the notes ring as long as I could, and also use the volume pedal for help to bring up the sustain. One real important thing to remember to any of your buddies that are recording tracks, if you're recording the track, if your buddy's recording tracks, whoever, whenever you're recording, there's one most important thing to remember that will save you a lot of time. Put a tuning note on the tape. If you're recording with a piano player, if that's the main keyboard instrument, have him hit that A about 5 times and let it sustain and record it before every take. Or when you get the take, go back to it and put that tuning note on. In the long run, it's going to save you so much time. Now, you might think, hey, it's a synthesizer track, and all synthesizers are tuned to 440. Don't count on anything being tuned to anything. If the synthesizer has a bunch of modulation in it, you're not going to be able to get a center of the pitch out of it. Then get a real pure tone out of the synthesizer at a 440 tone or whatever. Do something you can to get a stock, solid tone on that tape. Not just because, not just for the reference from that tape machine, but you might take that tape and put it on another tape machine. And I have 2 analog 24-track tape machines, and both of them play that A at a different pitch because one machine is running slightly different speed than the other one. So I've done so many record dates where I've tried to find the pitch. I'm going around trying to, kind of tune up to the track. I'm pushing notes around and kind of get some kind of, angle on where the pitch is. And then all of a sudden, because, it's all real musicians, I lose the center. I can't get in tune. It's just a disaster. But if that piano player would have hit that A and let it ring, or that synthesizer guy would have gotten a pure tone and just let that A ring for 10 seconds, I could take my strobe, tune it up to the track, tune my guitar, and I'm ready to go. I've wasted hours trying to tune up to a track because the pitch could be so wandering for so many reasons. So absolutely, if you ever do any recording and you're in charge, or your friends are recording and you mention this to them, this is rule number 1 with making records. Now, first of all, it was real easy to figure out how to do the pickups in this solo because the drums are playing triplets. Da-da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da-dum. So, obviously, with the triplets happening, I'm going to play that rhythm for pickups because it's exciting. And that would look like this in slow motion. Even slower. Okay, now to do the solo at that speed is going to be a little too slow, so let me just take it up a little quicker. Okay, now that's the first half. Now basically, there might be a harmonic here I'm missing, but whatever. These are the notes. I mean, when I play this thing, it's feel-wise. I'll never play it the same way twice. It just won't happen. Now the second half of the solo, a little trick that I like to use is an octave. So I've played the bottom octave. Now I'm going to play the second half of the solo. I'll play the high octave part. The bottom octave part's obviously an octave down. It's pretty much the same thing. So here we go. Here's something that I always wanted to discuss with guitar players in a group. Don't copy me. You can learn the solos and then forget the solos. Just remember the scale type movement or the flow. Then make the notes yours. I know I'm kind of confusing you, but what I mean is don't copy it verbatim. Don't try to play the exact same phrasing. You'll sound like me. We don't need another J. Graydon. There's already one. You need to be what you are. And here's the perfect example. The opening lick of the solo goes. Okay? Don't play it just like that. Make it yours. Change it. Make it like anything different, just to change it up some. I'm not saying, totally disregard these solos. I'm saying learn them for shapes. See how scales work in certain shapes, see how fingerings work, and then kind of make them yours. That's the bottom line. So anyway, now what we're going to do is I'm not going to play the front of the solo because I don't even know what I played. It's too greasy and too much feeling going on. I don't know exactly what I did, but I do know a couple of difficult spots, and those I shall show you as it goes by. So here we go. She just can't make up her mind. Okay, the situation with this solo is, once again, like I said, I'm not showing you the front stuff because I don't even know what I played. Okay, so basically, you can analyze how the chords work out with that. It's a nice little laying figure. It's not as hard as it seems. Now, the last figure of this phrase, I don't know exactly what I did. But once again, since it's a feeling type thing, who knows? I'll show you what it kind of looks like. Now that's kind of the shape. That's not the total shape, but that's kind of the shape. Up the tempo, I don't have a clue what it is, to tell you the truth. I just know what the shape looks like. And once again, here's what it looks like. That's all based over G flat 9 or whatever. That's all, like I say, G flat dominant. The last half of the lick is based on F sharp 9, sharp 5. That kind of tonality, and looks something like this. Now, as you can see, I'm not picking all those notes. I'm like picking every third one, basically. I'll do it slower. Now, up to speed. I'm trying to do the whole thing, kind of. Here we go. A point that I want to make now is what to do when you're playing fast, when you're playing solos, how to mute strings around it, okay? I'll show you a few techniques. Larry Carlton likes high action on his guitars. I like low action. Larry likes high action, so when he bends a string, he can actually, he's got thin kind of fingers this way. Can you guys see that? Okay, so what happens is, with his thin fingers this way, he can bend up under a string with high action, and what happens is, he actually gets his fingernail under the string, that, like the D string, for example. I'm bending the G string up under the D string at this point, okay? Now, that's one way he gets strings out of his way. I have very fat fingers this way, so I can't do that. And also, I prefer very low action. So what I do to mute strings when I'm playing is if I bend up, I ram the pick into the string that's right above it. For example, the D string. I'm bending on the G string, and I pull the D string out of the way with my pick. Okay, this is really a handy thing to do for me, and it makes for playing guitar synthesizer very difficult because the guitar synthesizer thinks a note's being triggered when I do that, so you have to totally change your technique if you're going to play guitar synthesizer. So, once again, bend up the G string, I get the D out of the way, I'm pulling it out of the way. Now, when I'm soloing playing, always both hands are very conscientious of trying to keep other strings from not ringing. For example, if in the key of C, now you can see what's happening. I've got, as soon as I quit playing the high E string, actually I never did play it. My fourth finger is resting on it to mute it. So the pick, picking the B string, pop down to the G, now I'm actually muting the B string with the pad of this finger that's not really doing anything right now. So constantly, back and forth, I'm doing my best to have strings not ringing by muting. This hand over here is pretty much covering the low three strings, the E, the A, and the D, so I'm always conscious of trying to get these strings muted while I'm playing solos. Once again, an example. Bending the B string. Right now, nothing else can ring because my little fingers stop on the E, my thumb and pick are jammed into the G, and my thumb is resting on the 3 low strings. So work out your own technique for doing it. This is the way I do it. If you don't do it, you're going to get strings ringing around all the time, and it really gets ugly. You really want to try to get the muting thing happening on strings you're not playing. Most important.
She's as sultry as a southern breeze.
The reason I wanted to play that little lick from the record is that's not just a regular guitar tone. That's a guitar running through a Marshall JCM 900 4100 series. And then when I was mixing the song, or right before I was mixing the song, I also had taken the signal off tape and ran it into a thing I made years ago with an old buddy of mine, John Hohen, called the Yapio tube. And the Yapio tube is basically a little speaker that sits in a box, and the sound of the guitar comes out of this little speaker in this box through a plastic tube. The tube goes in your mouth, you kind of bite it with your teeth, and you can kind of, move your mouth around to get these different tones out of your mouth with the guitar sound coming out of your mouth. You mic your mouth, and that's the sound that you get. It's a combination of regular guitar and Yapio tube in this case. There's one lick at the very end of the song that we'll show you in a second when I'm through talking where it's just Yapio tube, and you'll really get the idea because I kind of mouthed, "She just can't make up her mind." So you hear the guitar sound coming out of my mouth, but moving around your mouth and your vocal cords, you can actually kind of get talking type syllables with the guitar sound. Perfect example is the Peter Frampton album, live album. He used it all over the place. Other albums are old Stevie Wonder albums. This trick's been used for years, but this particular box is one that I'd built, like I say, with an old buddy of mine who's now a doctor. He's very good with his hands, John Hohen. Put together this little thing. We made 50 of them and sold a bunch of them in the early 70s. I still have a few left, and it's a lot of fun. Commercially, you can still get them. I think Heil makes it, called the Voice Box. Anyway, that's the concept for that. Basically, what I use in the studio is a Marshall bottom, 4 Celestians, vintage 30s. Now, Marshall makes 4 types of speakers. I'll run by this real quick. They make a 25 watt, a 30 watt, a 65, and a 75. The 65 watt is actually called the vintage 30s. I think they sound the best. That's my personal opinion. The 25 watters crap out too quick. They break up undesirably. They can't keep up with fast playing. They're just sloppy sounding. The same with the 30s. But the 65, which they call the vintage 30s, are my favorite. The 75 watt speakers are too stiff sounding for me. Also, the other speakers that are commonly used in today's market, the Electro Voice 12L or 12A, 12L, I don't like it. It's not my type of speaker. My favorite seems to be the vintage Celestian 30s. In the old days, in the early 70s, when we were using the Fender Deluxes on record dates and things like that, the speaker of choice was the Eminence. Still sound good in those kind of amps, but those amps to me, they just don't have the balls, for lack of a better term, behind them that the setups of today do. Okay, let's get to the equipment that I'm using now. Basically, I said the Marshall bottom with the 412s, Bradshaw preamp some of the time through a Bogner power amp, or the Bogner power amp stage of his amp called the Ecstasy, or just the Ecstasy. Other choices that I used on my album, for example, what you've been hearing so far has been mostly a Marshall JCM 900/4100, once again through the 412 bottom, an occasional twin reverb 2 that's been modified to the hilt by Paul, and that's pretty much it for amps. A 410 Bassman for the rhythm guitar sound on She Just Can't Make Up Her Mind. That's the only tune that showed up on, and what a great amp that is for rhythm guitar. All right, so now we're in the studio. I'm sitting in the control room with this particular guitar for most of the record. We'll get to all my other guitars later. Compressor, get it in the camera. Old orange, let me turn it around so you can, well, that was the right way. Dan Armstrong, old as, the sucker hasn't been made in I don't know how many years. Maybe they're doing a reissue now, I don't know. But a cool little compressor. Ernie Ball guitar, volume pedal. So after the volume pedal, the wire comes out of the volume pedal, plugs into an amp head that I usually have about 2 or 3 feet away from me so I can play with the controls, right, and get the sound that I want. Then a 60-foot speaker cable goes out into the studio, plugs into the speaker unit, and it is mic'd. Now I'm sitting in the control room listening at low level, and I'm getting my guitar tone together, and here's how I do it. Pull up the guitar fader, guitar amp fader up in the console. Now I'm listening to the microphone, pure, no effects. Now, I won't get technical on you on how to patch in the stuff, but any engineer will know how to do this. Then I creep up the harmonizer, and I'll tell you how I set these units in a minute. Then I creep up the delay line. I set that to where it's tastefully to me, tastefully set. And then I creep up a little bit of reverb. This is going to tape. It's a very short room sound, okay? All this is to taste, to where I like it. Now, once again, the guitar signal comes up on the console. Start creeping in a little bit of harmonizer. The harmonizer is my setting is 1.005. On any harmonizer from the 949 and beyond, they'll have 4 digits. They'll have a first digit, decimal point, and then 3 other digits. So 1.005 is the setting I like. If I use 2 harmonizers, one would be set to 995 and the other would be set to 1005. But it's typically one harmonizer set to 1005. The delay line is typically set to 45 milliseconds. I don't print long delays because I'd rather deal with that in the mix mode. I don't want to make that a permanent move. And then I also add a little bit of short room reverb, and I usually use an Alesis Microverb 3 set on room 1. Very inexpensive reverb, $200 retail. Get them cheaper than that probably if you look around, and they're delicious sounding. And that short room is great. So anyway, that's how I get my guitar sound for soloing. Now I'm ready to solo. As you know, most guitar players have incredibly complicated rigs that cost $15,000, $25,000. It can get ridiculous. The good news, what I just explained to you doesn't require a rig at all. I don't have a pedal board, although I did have one years ago. That's another story. We'll get into it. But you don't need to have an elaborate pedal board if you can't afford it, because if you pay attention to what I just said, try these settings, and work with an engineer in the control room, you're going to get the exact same tone, even better, a better tone than you would with a rig. And the reason for that is because when you have a rig, everything's happening at the amp speakers, meaning that the harmonizer, the delay lines, the reverbs, they're all coming out of the speakers, and this makes the speakers suffer a lot more. Typically, with just guitar into the amp, what you get out of the amp is the pure guitar tone. No effects. The speaker's very comfortable. It's not sweating trying to produce the pitch shifting, trying to produce the delay lines, trying to produce the reverb. It's much better to do this kind of situation in the recording aspect anyway, meaning guitar right into the amp, effects in the control room at the console. So don't sweat having a rig. You actually really don't need it if the studio has outboard gear, and every studio has enough outboard gear to pull off what I just mentioned. Almost every studio in the world's got a harmonizer, a delay line, and some kind of reverb. So it's easily done. And in this day and age, it's starting to go back to amplifiers more anyway, and this kind of concept will be more in vogue as time goes on, believe me. Racks are starting to lose their luster and their glory in the studio scene. It's getting back to these old type Fender amps. Okay, this song, Holding On to Love. Let me show you how the solo goes. I want to play that last lick again. Boy, it's sure weird playing these things slow, I gotta tell you. It's like I don't think that way, Anyway, a couple things in the solo that I want to talk about. First of all, there's a technique that I use all the time that really helps for string skipping. I'll show you what I mean. Like in this little lick that goes. What happens here is I use my fingers all the time. I'm rocking back and forth with the pick and fingers. I could go, so again. But up to speed, that would be very difficult to go. And would sound stiff, but listen how I can do it with rocking. Better example. You know what I mean? It's just like you can gain all this extra speed by using your fingers, and I do it all the time in my playing. So if you can get into that technique, you're going to gain a lot of string skipping playing that you normally wouldn't be able to do with a pick. We'll get into more of this as the solos go on, because it'll pop up again. Also, what I wanted to explain about this, let me get a clean tone happening here. Okay. Let me show you guys something about chord changes. On this song, Holding On for Love, basically the chords in a very simplistic form are these. You guys have heard this time and time again. You've used these chords time and time again. Basically, we've got E minor major 7, E minor 7, E minor 6th, or A9, depending on how you want to look at it. Okay. Typically, those voicings always get played in that shape. Here's a few alternate ways to play those voicings. E minor major 7, major 9, E minor 7, A9. That's one approach. I'll do it again so you don't have to back the tape up if you want to see what it looks like. E minor major 7, 9, E minor 7, A9. This works good in a chord melody type thing. I mean, you wouldn't do that in a pop type voicing. It wouldn't really be logical. Here's another one. Now this is kind of cool. This kind of breaks some rules. E minor 2 or E minor 9, however you want to call it. Now this is strange. This is kind of like a resolving diminished chord, or E minor major 7, 9, 11. Once again. And then the third chord would be E minor 7, the stock way, to A9. You can keep going with the progression. Actually, I'm going to do the whole thing again for you. Wherever you're going. You get the idea. But those are some alternate versions of the old type thing. Okay, let's see. I want to talk about harmonics while I got the clean sound up. Years ago, I listened to a guy named Lenny Bro and couldn't figure out what the hell he was doing. And a very good friend of mine, Ted Green, great guitar player, great chord melody guitar player, used to be a great rock and roller, and then one of the best teachers that's ever lived. If you ever get a chance to hear this guy live, do it. Or if you ever find his album around, I don't know if it's in print or not, but he made one solo album of chord melody type standards. Anyway, Ted figured out what Lenny Bro had done. None of us had met Lenny yet. Later on down the years, we had met him, but Ted figured it out. And it's this thing, this harmonic thing, okay? Basically, let's just take the open string version first so you can figure out what's going on. Now, how can I explain this? The best way to explain it is to do it. Listen. Okay, that's the open string version. As you can tell, it sounds like kind of like pianistic or harp type things where these close intervals can be played and remain sustaining, okay? But how would you do this if you weren't using the open strings? Well, this is what Lenny Bro did. And here's what the pattern looks like. Let's just bar across the 10th fret or the D fret. And here's what that pattern would look like under these conditions. So what basically is happening is this. You've got, I'm just going to show you what the notes are first without the harmonics. It would be the D string, 3rd string, right? Low E, but that's going to be a harmonic. It isn't now yet. G string, A, B, D, E, G. Now you hear how wide these intervals are because we're not using the harmonics, we're not taking some of these up the octave. So when we take them up the octave, it sounds like this. Okay, little finger is picking the D string first, okay? So little finger picks the D string, and while that's happening, the first finger is an octave higher than where you're playing, right here, okay? An octave higher. And the pick, get the pick back as far as you can. You know, if you don't use a pick, you can do it with your fingers. Doesn't matter, you just got to figure out a way to pluck the thing, okay? And still make the harmonic happen. So, little finger catches the D string, harmonic over the E string. Little finger catches the G string, harmonic over the A string. Little finger on the B, harmonic on the D. Little finger E, harmonic over the G string. So that's the basic pattern. Now there's a lot of variations we can do on this, and here's a couple of them. Here's another one. Anyway, you can see all these little possibilities, and now I'll slow these down and show you what they are. It's very pianistic, it's very pretty, and you might think, where am I going to use this? Well, when I was doing record dates, believe me, I found a lot of places to use this. Ballads especially, because it's such a neat little color. But you don't overdo it, you just find the right place for it. Okay, and chord melody stuff also, you know, it's really well used, as Ted Green does. One more time on some possibilities of variations. As I showed you before, that's the main pattern. Now, let's bust this up. Let's have the little finger hit the E string first, let it ring, and then hammer on the E note, okay? 2 frets up. Now, if we played the harmonic in the G string, we would get the next note up the scale, and it would sound like this on the D minor scale. So you see what's happening there. Now, if we do that, and then we hit the E again and pull it off, we've got this little pretty scale happening. Now let's take it further and go down the neck. Here we go. Harmonic over the D string, B string, little finger plays it, right? Let's go that far. Let's take it down further now. Once again, I'm going to start from the beginning. Harmonic over the A string, little finger on the G, harmonic on the low E, little finger plays the D. Okay, so up to speed. All right, now another variation of this. It stretches a little farther, okay? Once again, we're on the 10th fret, over the D. And by the way, I must say that this sounds best in the middle position, pickup position, or the treble pickup. When it's on the front pickup, it doesn't really speak well, but it still will. You have to experiment. Okay, another position. Another lick based on the same position. Okay, this time let's start by having the harmonic be over the B string at the 10th fret, the octave up from the 10th fret. And the little fingers on the G note on the high E string are 15th fret, 12, 13, 14, 15, right. All right, here we go, watch. Okay, now here we go, watch this. Now what I've done is after I played, catching the harmonic over here, over the G string, after I've hit that note, I release the little finger, second finger plays the E note, okay? Now the pattern continues, watch. I gotta do it faster to remember it. Right, okay, when you do play the E note, you pull off to the D that's barred, okay, on the high E string. Here we go again. And then continue down with the pattern. I'll do it slow again. Nice effect. Okay, now, as soon as I get the blood back in my hand, after holding that barred chord down forever, now what that is is that's pretty much a, okay, we started on D minor, right? Basically the shape was D minor. And the next shape is kind of like G13 flat 9. In this voicing, it's kind of like an E triad with a, well, it's best to think G13 flat 9. And any shape that you see down here, you just mimic up here. When we did the straight across business on the 10th fret, we never had to deal with moving this stuff around up here because it was just straight down. But when you make a shape over here, you just duplicate the shape up here. So you get the idea. Now we go to this chord. I'm just mimicking the shape that I see. I've spent a lot of time with this principle, and I think it's really a lot of fun and very musical. And if you don't learn anything on the tape but that, you're going to walk away with some knowledge that you'll have a lot of fun with. One of my favorite guitars is an Eddie Van Halen guitar. It's custom made. It has an ebony fingerboard on it, as you can see. Typically, the guitar comes with a maple fingerboard. I like ebony fingerboards a lot. Sterling Ball and Dudley Gimple had a lot to do with getting this guitar to me. I asked Sterling if he, in fact, would make one with an ebony fingerboard, and he had Dudley Gimple, his guitar maker at Music Man, do just that. It's really a good instrument, and there's a lot of good design concepts happening in this guitar that I'd like to explain to you. First of all, the tremolo bar. The tremolo bar only bends down. Now, you'd think in Eddie Van Halen's case, you always hear him pulling notes up, but he starts with the bar bent, hits the note, and then pops it up. But as you can see, you can't pull it back. Now, the logic behind this is there's a block that's stopping it from going up. And what happens is when the guitar rests, it hits that block. So the sustain of the strings is much better because the guitar is vibrating. The strings are vibrating with that block because it's touching. You follow what I mean? The strings are all connected to the tremolo bar, and they're physically vibrating into the tremolo bar, and that's vibrating against the piece of wood that is attached to the guitar. So the whole guitar as a whole is vibrating. Now, what happens is if the tremolo bar is a free-floating tremolo bar, able to be bent each way, which Steve Lukather likes and uses, I don't think the sustain is as good. I mean, I've taken the blocks out of some of my guitars that have tremolo bars to find out, you know, what would happen with the block gone and how it would sound. They never sound that good to me. The sustain gets funny. I also can't tune the guitar because whenever I put my finger on a guitar where the bar can fly either way, I'm putting pressure and it's going backwards, and I'm trying to tune the guitar and it's getting sharp. So for tuning reasons and sustain reasons, I believe that the block is absolutely an essential thing. There's a pick guard in this guitar. It normally doesn't come with one. The reason there's a pick guard on this guitar is there's a pick guard in every one of my guitars so I can get my little finger just below the high E string. Typically, most guitars have about an inch distance or so from the E string or any of the strings down to the body, you know, a big wide gap. My little finger gets hung up under there, and it's not good for my playing. I have short little hands, and when it gets hung up under there, I'm wasting space that I valuably need. And since I anchor my pinky a lot, that's why I need a pick guard, and I need it maybe a 1/4 inch from the strings, maybe a little less. Another thing this guitar has are the pickups are screwed into the guitar. So once again, the pickups vibrate with the guitar. Another good, you know, solid idea as far as sustain and vibrations. And I don't like Fender scale. This guitar is a Fender scale guitar. I think it's 24.5 inches, I'm not sure. Not my favorite scale. I like the Gibson scales better. But for a Fender scale guitar, I can deal with this real well. It's a well-made guitar, and guitar to guitar, they're very consistent, which is what I like about this line a lot. It's a very good sounding guitar. These pickups have a very pinpointed, centered tone to them. This is not the best setup to show you with. When we finally get into my studio situation on the next video, I'll explain all that stuff. But anyway, that's the Eddie Van Halen guitar. This guitar is made by Toshio of Bassa Guitars and Basses in Japan. It is a J. Graydon model that we've designed together and will be for sale. They're custom handmade guitars. It will be for sale in a few months. We're almost done, changing the last few little ditties. If you care about this guitar, you'll be able to contact Bassa. At the end of this video, you'll find out who to contact and so on. This guitar has a lot of the same characteristics of the Eddie as far as the tremolo bar only going one way, something I've always believed in, you know, only bending down, right? The pick guard, an adjustable height pick guard in this case, but it's easy to do with any pick guard. So I get it where it's real comfortable to me. Ebony fingerboard, which I love. The dots are going to be a little smaller in the long run. Gibson scale. Pickups are, I think, tone zone DiMarzios. And, you know, a single coil, humbucking type stuff. All the typical stuff that you'd expect electronic-wise. This guitar is absolutely an incredible instrument. It's exactly what I've always wanted. I mean, I designed it with Toshio, with the neck the way I like. It's just a great instrument. So hopefully, if you care more about it, contact these guys and you'll get some information. This solo was originally played on the Ed Van Halen model guitar over here, which I'll show you in a minute. It's a typical thing for me to do this type of playing, I guess, about 15 years ago in the airplay era. It's a very winding type guitar solo. But, you know, it's definitely part of my style, and I enjoy it. So I'll kind of play it for you slow. What you'll see is the winding aspect of, like, this melodic bending that's kind of going in and out. And then there's one lick that's another traditional type thing that I do, and I'll explain it after I show you slowly. Let me see if I can play this slowly. It's so hard to play these things slow. I mean, I can't get any groove going. But anyway, I'm showing you the fingering, so that's why I'm doing it, right? Okay. Now, there's a couple of licks in here well, there's one lick in general that needs some explanation. After the front lick, it goes. Okay, now watch the fingering with my right hand. Watch what I'm doing over here. You don't actually have to do this, but once again, for me, it's the cleanest way to do it. You see I'm going. This is the key here. You could go, but also a lot more stuff starts ringing around that way. This way you can still keep everything muted because you've got all these other fingers and, you know, to anchor down strings that aren't ringing. See, right now I got both these fourth and third fingers holding the E and the B string, and the palm of my hand is catching the B and the E string and the A string. So basically, the two strings that I'm playing on are the only two strings that are actually ringing or resounding at any level at all. Anyway, that's the story with Roxanne. Okay, now I'm going to show you what's happening. Great example of a couple of cool things to do. I'll show you. First lick is like slur, bend, slur, bend, slur, bend. It's like every other note's bent. I mean, it's really windy and greasy, and I've always liked that style. So real slow, here it is. Okay, let's just look at that. I mean, that's really left field for guitaristic type playing, but it works for this song. As you can see, I played the whole lick with one finger because I got out of a fingering position. There was just no way around it. Okay, now the next lick is a diminished lick. That's nice. Now comes a whole real big, weird bend thing that's kind of reminiscent to country guitar, but doesn't really sound like it, but it's that kind of a concept. Watch. Here we go. Anyway, it's always been a kind of a favorite of mine, and that's another one that I just accidentally remembered because it's got all that winding going on. And by the way, if you ever get bummed out that you're not improving, there's one surefire way to see how good you have gotten. Flip the guitar upside down and try to play it. This will show you how far you've come because I'm going to try to play the guitar like this. Look. You get the idea, right? Whenever you get bummed out, turn the guitar upside down, try to play it. You'll see how far you have come. Okay, little anecdotes. All right, what was I going to do? Oh, I know, the solo on Peg. This is what the lick looks like. I'm not going to show you the whole solo because I don't even know the whole solo. Like I say, I don't usually learn my solos. If something stays with me, great. If not, that's the way it is. But I'll show you what would be hard to figure out. Now, what's happening there is it's a double stop. I'm playing D and the tune's in G, obviously, or the basic melodic concept is. So what I'm doing is I've got D and F, okay, and the G string and the B string, and they're getting bent up. But they actually start bent up, and then I kind of pick it on the way down. And once again, I'm doing the finger and the pick business over here. So here we go. That's what basically happened, all right? I'll play it again. I can't play this too many times because it's kind of painful. Then it goes. Now what I did is I just slid up to the octave with my third finger here. This is going to be hit and miss. All these bends are hit and miss pitch-wise because they're very difficult to get in tune. So you just do as good as you can. Okay, that was close, but that wasn't ringing a lot. Anyway, the next part of the lick goes. All double stops. It's just up a step. And then sliding up to the, the third and fifth of the G chord. So that's what's the hardest, part to make out of that solo. That's what it is. Now let's go on to the next part. I forget the lick. It's something like. This is what you might not know how to deal with because it's walking down on one string. Here we go. It's something like that. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but I know that I made that kind of motion. Something like that, and I'm kind of grace noting this. That's a grace note. Another grace note. I mean, just randomly hit a harmonic, but it could be anything. It's just kind of a feel thing, Something like that. Anyway, the next lick, this is bizarre. Now, once again, you got to use the fingers and the finger rocking versus the pick technique. You got to use this here. You can't play the lick. Slow. So here we go. Pick the D string, second finger on the G, and then pull off. So you got. That's the whole pattern. So just move it around in the scale. To continue with the solo. Now, some kind of fast thing happens here. I think it's. And I'll just show you the form slowly. I can't do it slowly. That's about as slow as I can do it. And what happens is. There's some pull-offs here. It's a shape I use a lot. I'll get into the shape in a second, but the lick is... I don't remember the rest of the solo. If you learn the whole solo, show it to me, all right? Buying amps, buying guitars. This is a real important subject. Typically, a guy will go in and just buy an amp or buy a guitar, you know what I mean? He'll play one guitar and go, that's the guitar I want, or he goes, I know I want a Stratocaster because my buddy's got a Stratocaster or a Les Paul or whatever. The key to buying guitars is obviously to play as many of the same guitars as you can until you find one you like. Old guitars, new guitars, you know, there's terrible old guitars, there's terrible new guitars, there's great old guitars, there's great new guitars. So that whole vintage thing is 100% not realistic in my book. You know, a good guitar is a good guitar, a bad guitar is a bad guitar, period. So now you want to go buy a guitar, you're buying a new Les Paul, let's say. You ask them, how many do they have? Well, we have 5. Now, if you come off like a kid, they're probably going to go, oh, we only have this one. You got to come off like, you know what you want, and you want to play all 5. So you sit down and you play all 5 until you find the one that feels the best to you. Maybe none of those do. Go to another store or ask them when a new batch is coming in. That's my advice on buying guitars. Another thing, a lot of guitars come with heavy strings in it or heavier than normal. Ask what the gauges are that are on the guitar. My string gauge, by the way, is 9, 11, 14, 22, 34, 44. I use Ernie Ball guitar strings. I always have. Anyway, if the guitar gauge is heavier on the Les Paul than on the Stratocaster that you're playing, the Les Paul is going to be harder to play because it's got a physically heavier gauge. When you start to get down to a serious few guitars, invest in buying a couple of packages of guitar strings of the gauges you like. Ask if you can put them on these new guitars so you can really tell which one you want. You are buying an instrument that you're going to play for a long time. Don't let them intimidate you. Another thing in buying amps, if you have a buddy with a studio, most important to get an amp into a studio if you're planning on using it for recording. Because if you are going to use it for recording, you want to hear what it sounds like in the studio environment. You want to be in the control room, you want to hear the thing mic'd, and you want to listen on studio monitors that you're familiar with. It's the only way you're going to choose a real good amp for recording, because you're going to have to crank it up really loud otherwise, and you're not going to be able to tell how good the amp sounds cranked up in a room. For live playing, that's great, but for studio playing, you're going to want to hear that sucker cranked up in the room, but you want to be in the control room listening at low level so you can hear if the amp's got any cabinet buzzes or if the speakers sound not as good as the other amp speakers. You get the drift. It's real important to have this kind of philosophy in buying equipment, or you're just going to end up with mediocre stuff. The odds of you lucking into a great amp are not that good. I go through 6 to 10 amps every time I buy an amp, and sometimes I take that whole batch back, go to another store, get another batch, or wait for the next batch for that store to get in. I get real picky about this because it's part of my sound. It's something I really gotta like before I want it. So I hope you get the drift there, and it's something that I feel real strongly about. Everybody's got favorite licks. Whether you want to rely on them or not, you do. You come back to them when you run out of ideas. It might be fast licks, whatever. The whole bottom line to licks is that it's cool because that's just life. That's the way it goes. And a lot of times, if they're your favorite licks, they're usually pretty musical and a lot of fun. And I'll show you a few of those now. I can't play this slow, so you're going to have to look in the notated book that comes with the tape to see what's going on. I'll play it as slow as I can, but I'll just play it a bunch of times, okay? First of all, I'll play it kind of normal speed, whatever that is. I'll try to play it slower. Okay, that's one shape. Back up to speed. Now we're talking this kind of over A minor, okay? One more time. Now you can change the shape. When you get this fingering together, you can change the shape to all kinds of different scales. Let's do it diminished. So, once again. Now, you can make it major. Here, this is a major 7th type approach to that. Over that type tonality. You can just make the tonality whatever you want to make it. It's just this fingering, this bouncing action, hammering on, pulling off thing that's kind of cool. Now, another shape that I like to use is a diminished thing. You check it out. I'll just show you. I'll play it. Now, once again, I broke that up. I even got out of diminished land at the very end a little bit. But it's just a shape, and you play around with it. You know, shapes. That's what we're talking about. Scales and shapes. Another thing I like to do is licks like that. A lot of hammers and pulls. I mean, they're just shapes. Basically, it's picking when I change strings, typically. Dancing around, I do a lot of, meaning slurs. I do my best not to pick. Like, let me get back to the buzz. You can see how much my hand's moving, but watch how many times I'm really picking. I'm only picking when I change strings. I do that a lot. Basically, that's it for the lick style thing. I basically wanted you to get the shape more than anything. There's so much you can do with that shape. You know, going to the diminished, going to the major, going to all that stuff. So basically, that's it for the licks. One of the questions that I'm asked is, how do you become a record producer? This is a tough question. It's changed over the years, and the mode that it's in right now is, if you come in with a demo to a record company and they really love the song, you bring the song in, whether it's your song or not, and you have made the demo, and they really, really like the song, and you've done a quality job, and they realize that it's a quality recording, the demo being a quality recording, you could probably get the job as a record producer if you tried hard enough by saying the only way they're going to get to use this tune is if you produce it. The other way is do a lot of demos with talented demo singers that are good. I mean, call publishing companies, find out who these good singers are that do the local demos. See if you can actually produce some demos with them. Once again, you're going to need well, not once again, you're going to need a studio. It's going to be an expensive endeavor unless you've got a guy that's got a studio that you can use for free. There's no real easy way into this. But those are a couple of angles. And after you get your quality demos together, take them to a record company guy, see if you can get a meeting with a lower A&R guy and the staff. If he likes your work, maybe he'll throw you a bone to do, maybe a demo with one of their major artists or something. You just have to work your way up the chain. I hope to see you guys again. I really enjoyed doing this. And you got to write these guys about specific questions, or write GIT and have them get them to me through the guys that are, that we're making the video with. And I'll do my best to answer them the next time. And hopefully the next time we'll be in the studio, which will be a whole other approach to doing this kind of a tape. Thank you very much, and I'll see you later.